Student events. So we don't expect advisors to be at every single program undergraduate student organizations do, but there are a few guidelines and suggestions that we have for you to keep in mind as your students are going through the planning process so that you're aware of what you need to do when they have their event. In the undergraduate advisor manual, we have a section specifically for student events. So some of the information that's covered in that section that you'll probably be referencing pretty often is information about student events and the planning process, how to reserve rooms, how to reserve multimedia equipment and that sort of thing, and then also when you should expect to have to be present at an event versus simply helping the students with the planning process. Booking spaces on campus is fairly simple to do. For recognized undergraduate student organizations, any member of the group is welcome to reserve the space. So for Alumni Auditorium, Latham Hall, or any place in University Center, you can reserve a space in the University Center Administration Office, which is on the first floor of the University Center, straight back by the stairwell. Students can fill out a form there, or faculty and staff members that have access to R25, which is the online reservations program, can also submit reservations on behalf of their student group. After your event has been reserved formally and has been confirmed, the advisor will receive an email confirmation of the reservation, not the student group. So we do this to make sure that you're in the loop with what your students are planning and where they're planning to have their events, and that way it's on the advisor and the student group to communicate with each other to make sure everything is confirmed. If you want to reserve a classroom or another space on campus that is not run by the University Center office, then you need to go to the registrar's office in Lipka Hall. Generally, the assistant registrar will help you by asking for dates or the specific requirements you have for your space, and they'll find a space that's suitable for you and get back to you about a reservation. Advertising. All publicity on campus in print form needs to be approved by the Office of Student Life prior to being posted on any university surface. Based on our experiences, we happen to know a few places where you definitely shouldn't post things, such as on glass surfaces, windows, in hallways where there are not bulletin boards. Most of this is for fire safety precaution, but also because depending on the department or the building where you're posting, sometimes the people who work in that building have very specific requests about where things should and shouldn't be posted. So before any group has their publicity approved, we make them sign the form, and the form pretty much states all the locations on campus that are approved for posting. So it's basically a list of all the bulletin boards on campus. And also the student group that signs it, so the student member, is responsible for making sure that everyone who hangs that flyer for which they've signed puts it in only approved locations. So what happens is if you post in a location that's unapproved and the flyer comes down, you'll receive an email from either Student Life or the UC office, and they will let you know that you have violated the posting policy, and if you continue to do so, you will lose your posting privileges. Before a major event comes up, student groups tend to advertise via Facebook more often than not these days. So what we've asked them to do is, particularly with the social event contract form, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, we ask them to print out any Facebook or social media advertising they've done in print so that we can submit it with their contract and so that the office has a copy. We do this for two reasons. One, because sometimes students will bend the rules a little bit when they think we're not looking. So sometimes the Facebook ad might be different than what we approved in the office. The other reason is so that we can really monitor what they're actually sharing with people online, because it's really, if you're using the university name, we have the right to know and make sure that we're doing it appropriately. So it's for the student safety also. Multimedia requests are a little different than they've been in the past. The Office of Multimedia and Classroom Support has a specific set of resources just for student groups. So if they would like to have a movie night, for example, we have a projector screen, and we also have a DVD projector that's available for student use. Multimedia will not deliver resources for undergraduate student events, so students are responsible for making the time to go over to the library in the basement, stopping by after they've reserved the equipment ahead of time, and picking up the equipment and returning it on time so that the next group can use it. They have laptops, they have projectors, they have projector screens, they have speakers, they have a sound system you can use depending on what kind of event. So it helps if before you have your event, maybe 3 weeks or so, you take the time to think about what kind of multimedia support you'll need, and you can talk with them about what would best suit your needs. Does your group need help planning their event? Well, Student Life offers a number of services, consultations, and anything else they would need to get ready for their event in our office for free to all undergraduate student groups. So we can help you with the planning, we can help you with the advertising, we can help you with booking the space, finding a space that's applicable to whatever you'd like to do, what kind of event you're doing. And we can also help you, based on the university calendar, find a time or a date that will get you the most people to attend your program. The other thing that'll help you with planning an event is a social event policy contract. So any large-scale event, especially programs that are going to be late in the evening or for more than an hour long, especially if you're expecting a large audience, are required to use the social event policy contract, which is housed in the University Center Administration Office. This form has to be completed by a number of members on campus, so it's really important that if your students are planning a large-scale event, they give themselves enough time, at least a month or so, to get all the signatures they need in order to process their event policy form. We do this form so that students have enough time and learn how to go through the process of planning a large-scale event. So, for example, if you're planning a concert, you would have to reserve the room. That information's in the contract. You would have to confirm the room. You would have to give the information about who the artist is and that sort of thing to Student Life, so we could help you with any kind of contracts and that sort of thing that will come through the office. We would also help you with your advertising on campus and via social networking policies. You'd also have to talk to campus safety, because if you're planning to bring a large amount of people on campus, especially if they're not members of our campus community, there are different safety requirements depending on the size of your audience and which space you book. So all of those things are inside the social event policy contract. For an updated copy of the social event policy contract, you can contact the University Center Administration Office, and they'll be happy to forward you a copy via email or print one out for you. If your student group is planning a service or philanthropic event, it's important that you send them to the Office of Student Life so we can help them get coordinated with any other efforts we already have going on during the semester. Usually, in the fall and the spring, the Office of Student Life will sponsor a canned food drive and a clothing drive to benefit local charities in the Chester community. We try to only have one drive going on per semester or per week. We've noticed that in the past we've had significant number of drives going on at the same time, and sometimes people get confused about who's collecting what for when and how long, and sometimes things don't get picked up on time. So it's really important that you recognize that you have to go through Student Life in order to do a clothing drive or food collection of any sort. For service programs, the Office of Student Life is also a really great place to start. Our Director of Volunteer Services can help you get connected in the local community in Chester to do meaningful service, and can also let you know what we've already got planned through our Profound Service Once a Month programs, our Big Friends program, and our Big Brother and Big Sister connections with Southeastern Pennsylvania. So anytime you need a service program or you're trying to complete those 10 hours of service required by SGA, it would be a good idea to stop by Student Life. If your student group is planning an event for which they need a contract, definitely call Student Life before you proceed. Undergraduate student groups, or really students at all, are not permitted to enter into contracts on behalf of the university. All contracts have to be signed by either a dean or the vice president for finance and administration and the provost. It's really important that if you get a contract, or especially if it needs to be signed quickly, forward everything to Student Life and we can redirect it as necessary to make sure everything gets taken care of on time for you. Please don't let your students enter into verbal or written agreements on behalf of the university, because we can't back them up, and we want to make sure that they're doing the best thing for us legally. Also, if you have questions about how to interpret a contract, whether the terms are fair, or even if your group has a hospitality writer associated with an artist, stop by Student Life and we'd be happy to help. I probably go through a contract or a writer once a week, so I'm really happy to help you figure out what's reasonable and what's not, especially for the hospitality aspect of things. Sometimes artists ask for a lot, and that's not really pertinent when you're working at a university setting. Some forms that will be really important for you to have access to are all in the Office of Student Life, and include the publicity form, which is the poster policy that students sign off on when they have a flyer approved. Also, the community service log form. So, as you know, all undergraduate student organizations that are fully recognized under optimal standards are required to complete 10 hours of community service as a group. You're also required to do 3 programs per semester to show your contribution to campus life and help us do assessment. So those forms are both, the programming form and the service form, are both available in the Office of Student Life. We also have fundraising forms. So anytime you're collecting money at all, you would need to fill out a fundraising form. And that's to help us help you manage your money. It also aids the treasurer, but also to know where funding is going for different student organizations, and it'll help us with the budget allocation process at the end of the year for SGA. We also have forms for fraternity and sorority weekly socials, and we also have forms for chalking on campus. So for example, if you were going to advertise with chalk on campus, you're not allowed to do it on vertical surfaces. We don't really permit that during Widener Day weekends or other large-scale campus events. So it's really important that you take a look at those forms, or even just take a copy of each of them in the beginning of the year and keep them on file for your records. So if your students ask you, you have the information and you can give them copies.